Well, hey, do you remember a few weeks ago when David Suzuki said that there could or would or should be violence against pipelines? He wasn't very clear. Initially, he held his ground, refused to retract that. But I don't know where the pressure came from, whether it was from the David Suzuki Foundation, which for some reason has charitable status in Canada, or whether it was from the CBC. But he eventually realized that he had simply gone too far, this multi-millionaire essentially giving his moral blessing to eco-terrorism. So he finally walked it back, but everyone got the message. Well, not so at the CBC, Trudeau's state broadcaster. In this great story on True North by Cosmin Dzsurdzsa, it's revealed, by Cosmin's digging, that the CBC has just commissioned an anarchist who promotes violence, including videos like one titled, "How to Paralyze a Country." Trudeau's CBC state broadcaster has hired an anarchist to put together such a movie. Joining us now is Cosmin Dzsurdzsa, the reporter at True North, who revealed the story. Cosmin, how you doing? Great to see you.
Good. How are you, Ezra?
Well, I'm fine. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. I thought that maybe when David Suzuki blinked and walked back his eco-terrorist message, which was a little bit ambiguous. It wasn't clear if he was predicting it or giving it his blessing. He walked it back. But this guy, Franklin Lopez, he's full-on anarchist promoting violence, isn't he?
Yes, in some sense. So Franklin Lopez, by the admission of the CBC, has been an active anarchist activist in the Canadian community for about 20 years. So it's evident that the CBC was well aware of Mr. Lopez's past connections. Now, his work through the company Submedia, which he founded, has found its way on several of Canada's most radical anarchist extremist websites, like Montreal Counterinformation, North Shore Counterinformation. These are websites that regularly publish communications and descriptions of illegal and criminal activity, such as shutting down pipelines, throwing stones through bank windows. So there's an extensive network of these anarchist little communities that use these websites to get their word out and essentially encourage each other to pursue attacks on Canada's critical infrastructure and other such things.
So I want to make it clear, because just earlier today I was saying, look, Trudeau is looking to criminalize merely dissenting speech. And so we have to allow offensive speech and annoying speech and speech we don't like as part of the political hurly-burly. But I just want to be crystal clear. These websites that you're talking about, they don't just talk about ideas. They talk really how to make a pipe bomb, how to derail a train. Am I accurate in describing them that way? They're actual manuals, how-to manuals for violence and eco-terrorism. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. You know, as you mentioned, having an extreme or radical opinion is not illegal in this country. But what these websites endorse cross the line. Now, they put in tongue-in-cheek comments where they're just saying, you know, this is for informational purposes. But Montreal Counterinformation, which has published and linked to several of Mr. Lopez's videos, has published guides on how to make Molotov cocktails. Now, it's illegal to own or produce Molotov cocktails because they're a form of inflammatory explosives. So I think this clearly crosses a line. And the fact that the CBC is comfortable to work with such an individual that has been endorsed by these websites, and he himself has published, positive portrayals of people, radical environmentalist protesters shutting down pipelines. And as you mentioned, how to paralyze the country. These are very concerning things.
Yeah. The article on True North is called "Radical Anarchists Producing CBC Documentary on BC Pipeline Protests." Now, I want to make sure we sharpen the distinction between things that this anarchist, Franklin Lopez, himself has said or done versus the websites upon which he's published. I mean, I think we can infer certain things by him being published by these violence-promoting sites, but what's the worst thing that he himself has said or done. I suppose he gives them their blessing, but has he himself counseled violence or violence to property or violence to people that you know of?
As far as I can tell, Mr. Lopez has been very careful about what he says and does using his own name. Now, on his Twitter account, which has since been locked, he has, published positive messages about Antifa and various actions that they've done throughout the country and in the United States and beyond. So if you just look at Mr. Lopez's company, Submedia, there's hundreds of videos positively portraying other radicals. Now, as I said, he's been very careful, and he's also been very public about this, and the fact that the CBC has no qualms with that, it just goes to show how much they've sold their soul. And as we know recently from former CBC producer Tara Henley, the CBC has a far left problem, and it's endemic across the Crown Corporation.
Yeah. What was so interesting about your story is you actually talked to Chuck Thompson, the chief spin doctor over there at the CBC. He's the damage control mop-up guy. I really got to know his name during the whole Jian Ghomeshi scandal. So when he's put on a file, they're in trouble. But you're right. He basically said, we've known who he was for 20 years, and that's all we're saying. He didn't get into any particulars. I think it's unthinkable that the CBC would glamorize violence and eco-terrorism if it were against any other industry, if it were against, I don't know, wind turbines or something green. I mean, I don't know, anything against one of their left-wing heroes. But if it's against oil and gas, of course the CBC will do. Why is that a surprise? They're Trudeau's CBC state broadcaster. They do what he says. And Trudeau himself, I can't think that he's ever criticized eco-terrorism. He hired Gerald Butts as his principal advisor for years. So the CBC is basically saying, what are you going to do about it?
That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.